Hey, I've got this little talk I prepared called Rapid Transition. Thank you for joining me. So it's rapid transition from industrial farming to regenerative farming. What we'll talk about is, what will we talk about in rapid transition? For one thing, why to make the transition. And that's what this particular talk is all about, the why. In subsequent talks, we'll talk about how to make the transition, including understanding federal policy. We want to educate eaters, that is consumers. We want to empower farmers, that is producers, and we want to organize locally. The first item, understanding federal policy. Yeah, we want to understand federal policy. We will probably not change federal policy very quickly at all. That's why we need to, do as much of this as we can absent changes in federal policy. And then we will be the most prepared to change federal policy when we are organized as consumers, as farmers, and organized locally. So the purpose of this talk is to give a sense of urgency and to give a sense of possibility and to give you some talking points. Hopefully, you remember a little bit of this and be able to share it with friends, etc. We will talk about the following differences. So regenerative farming and industrial and regenerative farming are very different in all of the following ways. They're different in how they manage carbon and what they do to the soils, what they do for our nutrition, what they do for biodiversity, for water, and for livestock. And also they're different in the politics, the economics, and the control. Politics or economics is not a science. It used to be, it should be called political economy, and it's all about control. The economic system that we're subjected to in our industrial agricultural system is about control. So we need to take that control back. Consumers, farmers, and local communities need to have control over their food system. So in the big picture, industrial farming increases atmospheric carbon. It's bad for nutrition. It puts toxic chemicals into the air, the water, the food, and the soil. It destroys topsoil. It destroys biodiversity, and it causes desertification. Regenerative agriculture, on the other hand, stores carbon in the ground. It's good for nutrition, minimizes toxic chemicals in the air, water, and food. It builds topsoil, it builds biodiversity, and reverses desertification. Also, big picture, industrial agriculture is bad in the area of animal cruelty. Also, when you have livestock, they tend to destroy ecosystems, carbon cycles, and water cycles, and there's domination by huge corporations, and farmers end up spending a lot of their money on inputs. In industrial model, the farmer starts off the year way in debt, or at least with a lot of expenses associated with the inputs meaning synthetic fertilizers, patented seeds, insecticides, what are the other sides? Herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. In regenerative agriculture, you have, there's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, in regenerative agriculture, you have kindness to animals. The animals restore ecosystems, carbon cycles, and water cycles. You have independent farmers who have more control, and the farmers are spending less of their money on inputs. Therefore, the farming operation can be more profitable. We need to measure the success of a farming business not by production, not by yield, but by, is the farmer profitable, and is the work being done sustainably and ecologically in a way that yields nutritious food and is good to the animals. So let's talk about the difference between industrial and regenerative in the realm of carbon. So the industrial model releases carbon into the air. This happens when you plow soils. See, soil has a certain amount of carbon in it. Prior to European settlement, North American soils had 6 to 8% soil carbon. now it's more like 1 to 2% in most places. You also have you have natural gas, you have fossil fuels being used for to make fertilizers, and you have a lot of, so we'll get to that. Item number one, industrial releases carbon into the air, regenerative stores carbon in the ground. Number two, carbon is used to transport food long distances. California produces something like either 40% of the food or 40% of the produce for the United States. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. Whereas with regenerative, you're mainly dealing with local farms. You're eating food grown locally. Therefore, there's much less carbon emissions associated with the transport of the food. Also, item number three, you have to look not only at the carbon associated with the transport of the finished product, but also the inputs. If you're feeding grain to cattle, if you're feeding corn to cattle, how much transport and how much nitrogen fertilizer cause the emission of a lot of fossil fuels in order to make that product. Whereas in a regenerative situation, you're going to have the cattle eating mainly grass, and the grass grows on solar energy. The grass doesn't require fossil fuels to grow it the way cattle feed does if in an industrial situation. Item number four, in industrial, you're going to have nitrogen fertilizers made from a fossil fuel intensive process that fixes the nitrogen. We started doing this big time, starting about 1950, after World War II. We started using nitrogen fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizers are unnecessary and they tend to destroy the soil, but they're used in a big way to grow crops. We don't need to do that. In a regenerative situation, you have mainly natural fertilizers that are made on site. Think of the natural fertilizer that is cow manure, chicken manure, manure from pigs. These are good fertilizers and they're made on site. You have the cattle manure feeds the grass that they're going to eat later. They're going to move off of it and come back for that, but you're going to have natural fertilizers that don't pollute the water. So let's go on. Soils. Let's talk about the difference between industrial and regenerative in how the impact that they have on soils. Industrial agriculture, you have tillage destroys the soil. Soil has structure. Good soil is living soil. Good soil has many microorganisms, trillions of microorganisms per cubic meter. But tillage destroys all that, and synthetic fertilizers destroy all that. So in industrial agriculture, you have tillage destroying the soil, synthetic fertilizers destroying the soil, and generally speaking, item number three under industrial, you're going to destroy the soil biology and destroy the soil's ability to deliver nutrients to plants. That's very important. Living soils deliver nutrients to plants. Living soils hold water so that it captures the rain and helps plant growth. So in the regenerative column here, you're not going to have tillage. You're going to have a low till or no till situation. And that's good for soils. It's good for nutrition. It's good for water quality. It's good for storing carbon instead of releasing carbon into the air. You're in a regenerative situation, you're going to build living soils that naturally fertilize. The soils are going to naturally fertilize, especially if you incorporate animals. You're going to, in a regenerative situation, you build the soil, you grow the soil, and the soil grows the plants. And that's just, item number three, you're going to nurture soil biology and empower the soil to deliver nutrients to the plants. Good soil delivers nutrients and good for water quality, good for capturing carbon. A good soil is also good for the natural ecosystems. Let's talk about nutrition, the differences between nutrition in the realm of industrial versus regenerative. In industrial agriculture, you're going to have poor nutrition. the nutritional levels, the nutrient density of our foods has gone way, way, way down. Anywhere from half to almost 100, anywhere from 50 to 100% is the amount the nutrients have gone down in our foods since we have been using this industrial food system that destroys the soils with tillage and nitrogen fertilizers, et cetera. Regenerative, you're going to have good nutrition. We're actually, some of the good farmers like Gabe Brown and Dan Kittredge are two people that are, Dan Kittredge is in Massachusetts, Gabe Brown is in North Dakota. They're measuring the nutrients in their food, and that's going to be a selling point. So it's not just how many calories are you buying, but how much nutrition are you buying? Item number 2, under industrial, dead soils cannot deliver nutrients to the plants, animals, or people. Dead soils are just that, they're dead. In regenerative, living soils deliver nutrients to plants, animals, and people. Item 3, I've already talked about. You have declining nutrition in one scenario, you have nutrient-dense foods in another scenario. Item number 4, industrial agriculture uses toxic pesticides. These toxins get into our body. Everybody has these toxins in our bodies now, and it's really bad for our health. And it's also bad for the surrounding ecosystems. Insofar as ecosystems and habitat for wildlife is good in and of itself, it's also good for human health because those natural ecosystems are going to make for a more toxin-free environment, and also are going to deliver more nutrition to our foods. And item number 4, under regenerative, you have natural pest control. In the regenerative situation, you have beneficial insects, and you have healthy soils are going to grow strong plants that are resistant to diseases. You're going to have, regenerative agriculture is going to incorporate trees and bushes. You're going to have a little forest. You're going to have a little food forest there. For intact forests are good for plant health because the plants are signaling to each other through their root systems and through the fungi, especially the mycorrhizal fungi that grow in an intact ecosystem with healthy soils. And that is going to be good for plant health. And so you can have pest control without toxic insecticides. Let's talk about biodiversity. Industrial agriculture uses toxic pesticides, which destroys biodiversity. Regenerative uses natural pest control. Item number 2, under regenerative agriculture is going to nurture biodiversity. You're going to have birds, butterflies, bees, mammals, plant diversity, and you're going to have a soil ecosystem. All of this is good for biodiversity. One of the biggest problems in the world today, we hear all about climate change. We don't hear very much about the 6th Great Extinction. We are in the middle of the 6th Great Extinction. It's the most rapid disappearance of species in the last 65 million years when the dinosaurs died off. So we are, and it's human caused, we are rapidly causing the extinction of species. We need to reverse that process. And the best way, the quickest way to do that is to change our farming system so that we have farms that nurture biodiversity. Item number 3, industrial agriculture has monocultures that make war with biodiversity. So monoculture is like, you can have a monoculture of corn, a monoculture of soybeans, a monoculture of cows, a monoculture of pigs. So, whenever you have a monoculture, nature is diverse, monocultures are not. So monocultures crowd out the diversity that nature has to have. So if you're growing corn, you have to use insecticides and herbicides to keep all the pests out, and that is making war on biodiversity. All the land we're using for industrial agriculture, it's making war on biodiversity. I think much of the deforestation in the world is caused by industrial agriculture. You might hear that it's caused by what do they call it? animal agriculture. And there's some truth in that, but it's not the fact that it has animals, it's the fact that it's industrial and it is not regenerative, it is degenerative. So we, I keep saying industrial, we should be calling it degenerative agriculture, degenerative farming. That's what we have now. So and degenerative farming is causing massive deforestation. We need to go the other direction. But regenerative farming, on the other hand, farms are biologically diverse and part of the surrounding ecosystem. Let's talk about water, my favorite topic. So in industrial farming destroys water cycles, the rain, streams, groundwater. We've been talking about forests. Forests are necessary to bring rain. Forests are necessary to nurture healthy soils and harvest the rainwater so that when it rains, the rainwater goes into the ground instead of evaporating or running off. So that's what we need to do. Industrial farming destroys all that. Regenerative farming restores water cycles, rain, streams, and groundwater. Industrial farming causes desertification, whereas regenerative farming reverses desertification. So desertification is caused by deforestation. Desertification is caused by too much plowing and tillage that kills the soils so that the soils can't absorb the rainwater. Therefore, you don't have groundwater. Therefore, your streams are not running right. Industrial agriculture also causes deforestation. It causes desertification when you're using irrigation from fossil water. You dig a well, you're getting your water from way, way, way down there. And that tends to lower the water table. And then you have your streams dry up because you're lowering the water table. When your streams dry up or they run less continuously, then the trees and bushes and vegetation alongside the streams goes away. And that it causes more desertification, which makes even less water available through rain and through groundwater. And then it's just a vicious cycle. Yet that's how most farming is done today. But regenerative farming reverses that process, because regenerative farming, you have biology, you have ecology, you have ecosystems, regenerative farming is biologically diverse. So you have multiple species of trees, bushes, wildflowers, vines, grasses. You have multiple species of animals, pigs, cattle, chickens, goats. Not everybody wants goats, but some do. So it's going to be good for the water cycles. It's going to be good for carbon content in the soil. When you put more carbon in the soil, then it stores more water, and it's a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle. Item number 4, industrial farming pollutes the water with nitrogen fertilizers and glyphosate. Glyphosate is an herbicide. It boggles the mind how much glyphosate is used. Glyphosate is used because we have genetically modified corn and genetically modified soybeans that can withstand glyphosate. Glyphosate is also known as Roundup. So you have GMO corn and soybeans being sprayed with weed killers, and that stuff gets into our food, gets into our bodies, gets into our water supply. It's bad stuff. Whereas in regenerative farming, you're going to minimize all that. You're going to have little or no toxic fertilizers, toxic pesticides, insecticides. You're not going to use glyphosate or Roundup in regenerative farming because you don't have to, because weeds are to be controlled, but they're not this dire threat. Item number 5, industrial agriculture causes erosion, soil loss, and water pollution, whereas regenerative farming prevents erosion. If what industrial farming, I think tillage, you're plowing up the ground at least annually, you're destroying the soil structure so the soil can't hold water, and you have a lot of erosion. If you till up all the soil and turn the soil up into this powder, then it rains and it's going to run off into the streams and waterways. So that dirt is polluting the streams and waterways, not to mention the glyphosate, not to mention the insecticides, and not to mention the nitrogen fertilizers. And regenerative farming does away with all that because you're dealing with living soils, you're dealing with diverse ecosystems, you have a diversity of plants and animals on your farm. So it's going to hold that soil structure in place. And year after year after year, your soil is going to have more and more and more carbon. The soils of the planet have immense capacity to store carbon. The mainstream climate movement is not talking about this, partly because they don't know about it, and partly because they're in bed with big money, in my view. And that's why we're not talking about how to store carbon in the soil and then do that in such a way that also stores water in the soil so that water can be a global coolant. If we are willing to, water cycles and diverse ecosystems have the potential and the power to cool the planet much faster than carbon drawdown. But it's not an either or. We would be drawing both carbon and water into the ground if we were using regenerative agriculture. Let's talk about livestock. In industrial situation, you've got problems with animal cruelty. The animals are packed into tight spaces. They have a miserable life, with the exception of cows. Even in an industrial situation, have a little bit better life. Pigs and chickens have a terrible life. So you have issues with animal cruelty. Whereas in a regenerative situation, the animals are going to live a pretty good life. And so also item number 2, the animals are fed unsustainably. If you're feeding animals with grains, if you're feeding cows with grains that are grown unsustainably through big monocultures, we're using a lot of tillage, a lot of synthetic fertilizers, that's bad. If you have, whereas in regenerative, if animals are fed sustainably, cows eat grass. You can have grass-fed beef and grass-finished beef. Grass-fed beef means, grass-finished means the cow eats grass their entire life. Grass-fed is, all cows are grass-fed at some point in their life, and then sometimes they're finished with grains. It's best if the cow is fed their entire life with grasses, but it's sustainable. Whenever a cow's eating grass, it's eating solar-powered food. You've got the sun's energy. You got the sun and the rain and the cow manure making the food, making the grass grow. And then so that's what the cow eats. The cow eats food that is grown completely with solar energy. That's sustainable. Item number 3, in an industrial system, livestock causes desertification, either because the cows are not rotated strategically or holistically. That's one reason. When you can have cows overgrazing or undergrazing, and what it needs to be is just right. It needs to be just the right amount, and it needs to be timed just right. The cow needs to be able to graze, and then that paddock needs to rest, usually for a period of at least a few months. And if you do that, then your livestock is reversing desertification. Your grass is going to grow robust. You can have like 5 times as much cattle production, 5 times as much beef production per acre if you're strategically and holistically rotate your cows. This has been pioneered by Alan Savory, and I recommend one of his books at the end of this. In item number 4, we've talked about animals being raised in monocultures under the industrial system. In regenerative, animals are raised in biologically diverse ecosystems. In industrial, you have too much subtherapeutic medicine. You know, 90% of Americans, 95% of Americans don't want cattle to be fed antibiotics in an indiscriminate manner. But that's what happens, because when you do that, the cows gain weight. But it's, you know, people don't want that. And whereas in a regenerative situation, you have no subtherapeutic medicine, and you don't use toxic chemicals for parasite control. Parasite control becomes natural in a regenerative situation. You have predators that eat the parasites. You have rotation that keeps the parasites from growing too much. You have a diversity. So parasites thrive in monocultures. If you have one species and you have 1,000 of them in one place, then parasites and pathogens are going to thrive in that situation. But if you have a few cows and a few pigs and a few chickens, the pathogens get confused and the parasites get confused. The parasites, a lot of them get eaten. If you have, you know, chickens following behind cattle, the chickens will eat the parasites that the cattle produce, and that's a good situation. So in item number 6, in an industrial situation, you have livestock operations that are toxic to the community and to farm workers. I read the CDC report on concentrated animal feeding operations, and it's absolutely disgusting what these things do to the health of workers and the surrounding community and the water quality. They get exposed to all kinds of diseases. They have to deal with the smell. The manure is not disposed of in a way that is sustainable. Whereas in a regenerative situation, if you have the livestock are going to be, you know, if a cow poops on grass and it's a good, healthy, robust grass ecosystem, then, and especially if you have chickens coming behind it, then that manure is going to be worked into the soil and it's going to cause the grass to grow. You don't have that in an industrial system. Let's talk lastly about politics, economics, and control. In the industrial system, our entire food system and our entire agriculture is controlled by big multinational corporations that don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about our ecology. They don't care about our economy. They just want to make money. They're huge, tyrannical, hierarchical, autocratic organizations that want to extract everything from us without giving anything back. So, but in a regenerative situation, you have independent farmers and that are a boon to the local economy. An industrial farm is bad for the local economy. A small independent regenerative farm is good for the local economy. In an industrial situation, you have monopolies controlling the farmer. In a regenerative situation, you have independent farmers that have more control. In an industrial situation, the consumer has poor choices. In a regenerative, so consumer has poor choice. You go to the grocery, go to the supermarket, there's a lot of choices, but they're mainly poor choices. They're poor choices nutritionally, and they're poor choices ecologically. In a regenerative situation, you have good choices. You have good nutrient-dense food that's toxin-free, and you have food that has grown ecologically and sustainably. In an industrial situation, the consumer interacts with brands. In regenerative situation, you have the consumer interacts with farmers. You know your farmer, and you know where your food is coming from, instead of interacting with brands that a lot of times are just, you know, most of the food we get is toxic. Even if it's organic, if it's organic, it's a little better. But even if it's okay nutritionally, you know, just because it's organic, it doesn't mean it's nutrient dense. We need nutrient dense food, not just organic. Mainly means it's raised free of toxins, but that's only part of the picture. Conclusion: industrial agriculture is bad for the carbon footprint, bad for nutrition, water quality, biodiversity, animals, and local economies. Regenerative situation is good for the carbon footprint, nutrition, water quality, biodiversity, animals, and local economies. So we've tried to compare and contrast industrial farming with regenerative farming. Change is urgent. So how quickly can we make the change? How soon can we get this done? And if we're going to get it done quickly, how does that happen? So in future installments, I'm going to talk more about the how. We need to be aware of federal policy. We need to understand federal policy, even if we cannot change it right away. And if we ever do change federal policy, it'll be because we've educated one another as consumers. It's because we have empowered farmers. We have taken people who want to farm regeneratively, and we've shown them how to do it profitably. And all of that will require that we organize locally. As we organize locally, we will be educating eaters. We will be empowering farmers. So recommended resources. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many books here, but these are some of the best. I probably left out some very good ones, but I've read all of these, some of them multiple times, and I know they're very good. Dirt to Soil by Gabe Brown from North Dakota. It's a wonderful book about his journey from conventional industrial agriculture to regenerative. Restoration Agriculture by Mark Shepard, who is in Wisconsin. Holistic Management by Alan Savory, who spends part of his time in Africa and part of his time in North America. The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. It's a wonderful book. Talks about the industrial food system, and part 1, industrial food system. Part 2, industrial organic food system. Part 3, truly regenerative local system, that he visits Joel Salatin in Virginia to talk about that. And the last book on the list is Folks, This Ain't Normal by Joel Salatin. Look up all of these people on YouTube. Gabe Brown, Mark Shepard, Alan Savory, Michael Pollan, and Joel Salatin are all on YouTube. They have excellent free content on there. This has been written and delivered by me, Hart Hagen. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to stop the screen share. And let me see if we have any questions here that I can respond to. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the meeting. I'll be doing the same talk more as time goes on. Hopefully it's going to get a little better as I practice more. And contact me if I can help you in any way.